Hey everybody, Eric Dorward here with the Spartan Rocketry Club, continuing my build here of the Estes Sasha. In the intervening time, I obviously painted the thing, put it through all the steps in between, priming and all that stuff. The grain is, it's better, but it's not flawless. It could have probably stood another pass with the wood fill, but overall, it's reasonably good. It looks pretty consistent. And I don't think that there are any particularly obvious spots that need a touch-up of paint either. So it's time to put the decals on. Now I'm probably going to have to do this in two phases. And that's fine because there's a top and a bottom of this thing. So I thought too about, I'm going to do the bottom first. So we'll just get rid of this for the time being. I thought about putting the engine bell on now, but this is silvery paint. And I've had bad experiences with silvery paint and the clear coat, so I'm going to put that on absolutely last. I have cut out the decals. The instructions say use a knife. I don't ever use a knife. There are a couple stray things that I do sometimes use a knife for, but honestly, it's very rare that I will use a knife. I'm better with the scissors, I think, is really kind of the bottom line here. Alright, so I'm getting started with the decals. I've got my cup of warm water here. I've got a paper towel to blot things, and I've cut most, but not all of them, that are going to go onto the first stage here. Once it's soaked a little bit, it should, it's still a little sticky, and that's about the right consistency that I like to apply these. So the first bit here is going to go right above the fin. And I'm just going to put it down as close as I can get to the edge. The decal is just as wide pretty much as the space that I've got here, which is good. It means that I built this correctly, because that's exactly how it's supposed to be. Right, I am rotating the rocket rather than really messing with the decal paper all that much. It's not quite right. So a little bit of fine-tuning there at the end, and of course I want them to match up perfectly. I'm going to throw the next one in and while I'm smoothing this out. So I'm just going to put my finger down and I'm going to smooth from one end to the other to get any air bubbles out as best as I can. And you can see there's some that are in here, and I'm just pushing them along pretty much. And that's fine, because when I get to the end, they should just pop right out and everything should be nice and smooth. Okay, that's pretty great. Let's hope I don't bump that too much. It's entirely possible I will. Alright, so to figure out where all this stuff goes, I have just off camera and now on camera the nice glossy picture that came with it. So I've got these, there are 8 of them. They are not all identical. One goes on the left, one goes on the right. I also need to find this box part. That actually, I'm going to have to see if I can't look in the actual instructions to see where that goes, because I'm not 100% on that. Alright, so I'm going to toss the next one in while I place this. Because this is cut on a diagonal, it should really only fit in one spot. Right, so it's just the right size to go from the top of the fin out to the bottom. If it's not quite right, I can shift it a little bit. That's the nice thing about water slide decals, is that they slide, at least while they are wet. So that's pretty good, and once I have it in place, I'm just going to blot and push. The hard part about doing these often is figuring out precisely where everything goes, and also like making sure that the pieces that you put on are aligned with themselves, right? So these are all basically the same, right? So I want them to be, the next one I want to line up perfectly with the first one I did. Well, that shouldn't be as hard this time, because these can only really fit on one way, provided that it's going exactly from the top of the fin to the bottom. Now do be careful. There There are a couple decals on already, and I really don't want to bump any of them if I can help it. That would be unfortunate. It's not quite in the right spot. So I'm going to get my thumb a little wet here. Because, oops, the risk in moving these is that you tear them, which is a distinct possibility. It is the thinnest of thin plastic, and it doesn't take much to tear one. And, oops, yeah, you can see up here, I don't know how I bumped that, but I did. Yeah, there we go. So do be careful with that. Try to minimize contact as best you can. And the quicker you work, hopefully, the less likely it is that you will have any little incidents. It's also a good idea to try to get the decal as close to its ending location as possible. So that wasn't quite right, but you don't want to move it too much. You can move it a little bit, but the less you have to move it, the better. Okay. Sure, this doesn't look all that smooth over here. Let's try. There we go. So I'm just going to go around here, and then I'll try to figure out where those rectangular pieces are, because there's definitely a rectangular piece shown in the picture, and I would like to get that on, hopefully in this batch. The water I have, right, it's about as hot water as comes out of my faucet, so I keep it that way so that the cup stays warm as long as possible, so I have to make the fewest number of trips to and from the sink. But eventually it's going to get lukewarm and then not warm, so I'm going to try to move as quickly as I can so that I have to do the fewest trips to the bathroom, basically. The warmer the water is, too, the faster the adhesive loosens up. So, I mean, I suppose you probably could do this in cold water, but it might be a while that you're waiting on the adhesive to loosen up, and that's not really helpful to anything. It's also worth pointing out, too, that the glue on this is actually still, the paint on this is still a little bit tacky. So I did this, I put two coats on. The last coat I did about 24 hours ago, and it's still a little tacky, which isn't really the worst thing in the world. It's a little helpful if you are trying to get these to, if the glue or if the paint is completely dry, they really slip around, which might seem like a good thing. And it's not bad, but it does make it a little bit harder and a little more likely that you're going to bump it, send it sliding someplace you don't want it to be as you're going along here. I've got two more left, and then try to figure out what to do with the rectangles. And my water is lukewarm at the best at this point. That's fine. All I really want to do in this particular video, which is to say with this cup of water, is to get these main ones on. And if I get a rectangle, that'd be great too, but if not, well, oops, that can happen. Try to keep at least some of the decal underneath my thumb when I do that initial blot, but that one's not free. I'm almost done. I just want to make sure that I didn't bump any of these or miss any obvious bubbles before everything dries out, because that would mean, as soon as these are dry, is it possible to get them wet and move them? Well, I mean, I guess technically, but I really would not want to do that. That could get messy, that could get messy pretty quick, and I don't want to do that. That would be unpleasant. Alright, that's the last one. That a go. That one didn't quite lay as smoothly as the other ones, but that's why we bought. Alright, so ideally the red bits should line up with each other almost exactly because they're cut to size. They only fit one place. They actually look quite good. I'm rather pleased with that. Alright, so the last bit here quickly that I want to do is this rectangle right here. Well, the only thing that I see that looks even close to that, there are a bunch of them. I'm going to cut the biggest ones out. And it's actually possible. This is one of the problems with the picture only being from one vantage point. It's possible that there are 4 of these. They're slightly different. You can see them right here. That one goes on each of the 4 faces of the rocket, and they're just slightly different, and I can only see the one. So, considering I don't see any elsewhere in the diagram, I'm gonna operate under that assumption. So I'm gonna just snip one, and that'll be all I do on camera here, because like I said, the water is getting a little warm. The rest of these, I try to trim them as closely as possible. That's probably not truly necessary. It was with the triangular ones, especially at that thin edge. I wanted that to be pretty precise. But these, this doesn't matter all that much. I've got some space to work. Alright. But I do like to get them as close as possible, and this is exactly why I use scissors instead of a knife. I'm better with the scissors. And do what works best for you. Alright, so this, and the water is now quite cold, this is going to go like 2/3 of the way up, so probably about here, and I do want it as centered as possible inside this part of the fin. That did not go on particularly smoothly, so I'm doing a little bit of pulling it with my fingers, and that's probably not a great idea. Let's use the paper towel instead. Alright. The only thing that I really wanted to be sure about when I put that on is this face. Might as well do this. This face has the launch lug, and I obviously don't want the I don't want the launch lug to be overlapped by a decal, because there are a lot of reasons. It should be pretty obvious. It's not going to fit. It's not going to look good. At this point, though, I'm kind of guessing. I don't know which way is up on this picture because I can't see it in the box art. I mean, maybe if you went to Estes' website and had a look, there would be more information. I don't know. I don't see it. So I'm just going to say little box up. And I'm going to use the other one as good of a guide as I can as to where to put it. But I am just kind of eyeballing it at this point, and I'm going to look at it and try to have them aligned, like at the same start as best as I can. It's actually kind of hard to see for a variety of reasons, not least of which is this is black on a pretty dark green. This was the best green I could find. It's supposed to be more like a olive, I think, but I could not find such a color, so this is going to have to do. I think it looks fine. It's not far off from the box art, so it'll do. Alright, they look pretty close. Yeah. Alright, so that's good enough. I'm going to put the last 2 on off camera, and then the next video I need to do the top, so I will see you then.